The door sensor at the 38th floor executive lounge changed from green to yellow at 1:09 a.m. There was no chime. There were no flashing indicator lights. Just a small box changing color on the security screen in the office of Caleb Mercer, the founder of Mercer Crown Hospitality and the owner of the Aurelia Chicago River Hotel. He had requested the security department to notify him whenever someone entered that room after midnight. On the low table next to the glass door, they had left a cream-colored envelope containing $5,000. No name, no seal. Nothing but money and an opportunity for a person to decide who they are when believing no one is watching. The person who entered was a woman wearing a charcoal housekeeping uniform. She held the door with her shoulder, pushed the towel cart in, and then checked the room list on the intercom. Caleb did not know her name yet. On the shift roster, she was just a 4-digit code. She did not look around like someone entering a forbidden place. She started working as if the room was no different from the hundreds of rooms she had passed through before. She collected 2 wine glasses, poured the remainder into the sink, and placed them on the cart. She replaced the trash bag, wiped fingerprints off the glass door, and picked up a cufflink under the sofa. The envelope lay on the table, offset from the pile of documents that had been left behind after the executive board's private meeting. It was thicker than the envelope Caleb had requested to be placed there, but from the security camera's angle, that difference was unnoticeable. The woman saw it at 1:12 a.m. She did not touch it immediately. She adjusted the chairs, wiped the table surface, pulled the curtains straight. Only when the room had no more work to delay did she pick the envelope up. Caleb leaned toward the screen. He had watched 2 other envelopes disappear at 2 hotels in the group. No reports, no notes, not a single call to security. He had waited for the 3rd result with the calmness of someone who believed he knew the answer in advance. The woman opened the envelope. Her hand paused. She pulled out each stack of money, placed them on the table, and counted. Once. Then once more. At the last stack, she sat down on the edge of the sofa as if her knees had just stopped working. She took from her pocket a quarter-folded piece of paper, opened it on her lap, and placed it next to the money. Caleb could not read the content. He only saw the date circled in blue pen and a handwritten line at the bottom of the page. 1 minute passed, then 2 minutes. The woman did not look at the camera because she did not know it existed. She did not dart her eyes toward the door, did not hold her phone. She only looked at the paper, looked at the money, then pressed her right hand to her mouth. Her shoulders did not shake. She did not cry. But her knuckles went white from the squeezing force. Caleb had seen many types of hesitation. Some people looked around before stuffing the money into their pockets. Some paced in the room long enough to turn their behavior into a debate. Some convinced themselves that the forgotten item no longer belonged to anyone. The woman on the screen did none of those things. She looked at the $50,000 like looking at a door that had opened right when she no longer had enough strength to step through. Caleb did not know the amount was $50,000. He believed it only had $5,000. Do not leave yet, because what Nia just did was only the first part of the story. By the end, Caleb will discover that the envelope did not belong to his test at all, and the truth behind the $50,000 will make him look back at his entire life. While continuing to watch, leave a comment letting us know where you are watching this story from. And if you love stories about kindness, resilience, and the people often forgotten by life, subscribe to the channel so we can meet again in new stories every evening. At 1:21 a.m., she stacked the money back, closed the envelope, and placed it into the inner pocket of her uniform shirt. After that, she continued working. She vacuumed under the table, checked the mini fridge, replenished tissues in the restroom, left the executive lounge, went down to the 26th floor to replace trash bags, passed the 19th floor to bring extra towels, and stopped at the 12th floor because a guest spilled coffee in the hallway. 43 minutes passed. The envelope still lay against her chest. Caleb leaned his back against the chair. He knew what would happen next. She would go down to the basement, change clothes, and leave the hotel through the employee exit. The next morning, security would make a report. Human resources would check the shift schedule. Caleb had not decided whether to fire the person who took the envelope or not. He told himself the purpose was not to punish. He only wanted to confirm what he had believed since his wife passed away. Humans are honest when the price of honesty is still low. But the woman did not go down to the basement. At 2:04 a.m., she stepped into the main lobby. The marble under her feet reflected the yellow lights. Outside the glass doors, the Chicago River was a black strip cutting across the city. The night guard was bending down over his phone screen. No one looked at her. She took the envelope out, placed it on the black stone security counter, and tore a piece of paper from the shift handover logbook. She slowly wrote 7 words. Found in the executive lounge. Night shift. No name. No employee code. Not waiting for a thank you. She smoothed the edge of the envelope twice to make it lay flat, turned away, and stepped into the service hallway. Caleb stood up. He did not call security, did not request to hold her back. He took his coat, went down the private elevator, and stepped into the sedan waiting under the east canopy. The driver asked for the address. Caleb saw the woman at the end of the street, one hand carrying a bag, the other pressed against her wrist as if it was hurting. "Follow her," he said. "Keep your distance." The sedan left the curb. The woman did not look back. The sedan kept a distance of nearly 2 blocks as the woman passed by the still-lit hotel windows, the just-closed restaurants, and the towers reflecting on the river surface. She got off the train at South Shore at 2:48 a.m., walked past a laundromat open through the night, and a grocery store that had pulled down half of its iron gate. Her footsteps were slower than when she left the Aurelia. Not because she did not know the way, but because her body had stopped pretending that it was not exhausted. The building she lived in was located above the laundromat. The exterior wall bricks had discolored. The doorbell was missing 2 buttons, and the glass on the main door had a crack running from the top corner to the middle. She stopped under the canopy, put her bag down, took off her damp uniform shoes, rubbed her 2 feet through her socks, then took out an old but dry pair of sneakers. After that, she checked her reflection on the glass door. She pulled her collar straight, wiped a mascara smudge under her eye, and hid her trembling left hand in her pocket. The last thing she did was smile. Not a smile appearing because a person is happy. That was a smile built up so that the people on the other side of the door would believe that everything was still under control. A small shadow appeared behind the second-floor window. The boy pressed a yellow paper boat against the glass. The woman saw it, and the fake smile on her face changed. It was smaller but more real. She raised her hand to wave, then stepped inside. A few seconds later, the second-floor kitchen lit up. Through the window without curtains, Caleb saw a girl of about 10 years old standing by the stove, using both hands to lift a pot of soup out of the microwave. The woman stepped in, and the girl immediately took the heavier bag. The boy did not speak. He placed the yellow boat on the empty chair next to the table, then pulled his mother's hand toward it. The mother did not sit down. She bent down to kiss his hair, opened the refrigerator, and checked the papers stuck on the door. Caleb could not read the words. He only saw boats of all colors, a few drawings of bridges, and a calendar with many circled boxes. The woman rested her hand on the edge of the refrigerator for a few seconds before turning back to heat up her portion of soup. The previous afternoon, Nia Simone Brooks's day began with the sound of a spoon touching the bottom of a bowl. She woke up at 12:36 p.m. on the sofa in the living room. Lila was sitting on the floor doing homework, while Jonah folded a supermarket flyer into a boat. Nia had yielded the bedroom to her 2 children 2 years ago, after the radiator in the living room started waking Jonah up every night. She said she liked sleeping near the window. Lila knew that was not the truth, but the little girl was used to not correcting the words created to protect her mother's self-esteem. On the table were 2 bowls. One was clean. The remaining one contained a half portion of noodles and a meatball. "I am not hungry," Lila said. The answer came too quickly. Nia looked at the untouched piece of meat, looked at Jonah eating, then looked at her 10-year-old daughter who had learned how to turn deprivation into a choice so her mother would not feel like a failure. She divided the piece of meat in 2, placed one half into Lila's bowl, and ate the remaining part while standing by the sink. On the refrigerator were a heating bill, Nia's mother's rehabilitation appointment paper, and a list of 6 speech clinics. 5 names had been crossed out. The 6th had the words, "Call back Thursday." Nia called at 1:10 p.m. She waited 17 minutes before the staff announced the earliest schedule was a morning 3 months away. Nia worked the night shift before that, could not return before 2:30, and had to take Lila to school at 7:40. She asked about another time slot. The woman on the other end of the line apologized with the voice of someone who had to apologize too many times in a day. Jonah pulled his mother's sleeve and held up a blue boat. Blue meant sad. Red meant scared. Yellow meant he wanted his mother to read the book about bridges. Nia squatted in front of her child. "Mom will find a way." Jonah looked at her lips. He tried to repeat, but the sounds got stuck behind his teeth. Nia waited, did not speak for him, did not rush. When he stopped trying, she kissed the blue boat, then stuck it on the refrigerator like a complete sentence worthy of being kept. Before going to work, Nia opened the banking app. After rent, train tickets, electricity, and the payment for her mother's rehabilitation facility, the account had $83.14 left. She earned $18.10 an hour, only a small margin higher than the city's minimum wage. From July 1st, 2026, the minimum wage in Chicago for businesses with 4 or more employees is $17.05 an hour. Working a full 40 hours per week for 52 weeks is equivalent to $35,464 before taxes. Nia arrived at the Aurelia at 4:46 p.m. The executive lounge 3807 was added to the list after a private meeting. When she stepped in at 1:09, 2 wine glasses were still on the table and the cream-colored envelope lay next to the sofa. $50,000 did not appear as money. It turned into 100 therapy sessions for Jonah. Into the shoes Lila said still fit even though her toes were curling up. Into windows with no more drafts. Into 6 months of expenses for her mother. Into meals that did not require dividing the last piece. Nia placed Jonah's appointment paper next to the money. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine the envelope was not forgotten. That after many years of only taking away, life had returned something. Then she heard her father's voice from a kitchen that no longer existed. What does not belong to you will not save you. It only forces you to live like someone else. Nia stacked the money back. She carried it against her chest for 43 minutes, long enough to feel the weight of everything she was giving up, then put it down on the security counter and returned home with $83.14. On the way back to the empty house, Caleb opened his phone. He did not look up Nia's file. He opened the photo of the letter Miriam had written 4 days before she died. The letter lay in an envelope that had gone soft at the 4 corners because it had been touched by Caleb too many times. He read it every morning for 5 years, but on the way back from South Shore, the last sentence suddenly had a different weight. Do not measure people by what they give away when they have plenty. Look at what they put down when they themselves need it the most. Caleb Mercer grew up in a rented house in the west of Chicago, where the winter slipped through the door cracks and his mother rolled up towels to block the bottom of the walls. His father worked as an electrician for a maintenance company, taking night shifts because of the extra 35 cents an hour. His mother replaced bed sheets at a motel near Midway Airport. She returned before sunrise, 2 hands red from bleach, hair smelling of cigarette smoke from rooms that did not belong to her. Caleb learned the hospitality industry by standing behind the reception desk of an 18-room motel that he leased when he was 24 years old. The sign out on the street could only light up 3 letters. The ice machine usually stopped on weekends. The second-floor heating system sounded like a truck trying to start. Caleb fixed the toilets himself, changed the locks, washed the towels, and drove to pick up guests stranded at the airport. During the first year, he slept in the storage room because the rent for an apartment equaled the amount to buy new bed sheets. He did not call that period difficult. He called it data. An empty room was lost revenue. A leaking faucet was money flowing out of the account every day. A guest not returning had a greater value than a refunded night. He recorded everything in a notebook. The room cleaning time, the number of lost towels, the number of minutes from when a guest called until an employee appeared in front of the door. What could be measured could all be adjusted. What could be adjusted could all be expanded. Miriam stepped into his life on a night when the snow was ankle deep. She was an emergency nurse, getting off her shift after 12 hours and discovering her car would not start. Caleb was driving the motel's van when he saw her standing under the streetlight, wearing a thin coat, her hands holding a bag of food. He asked if she needed help. Miriam looked at the motel logo on the car door, then asked whether he usually kidnapped people using an airport shuttle van. Caleb laughed. That was the first time in 3 days he remembered he could do that. Miriam did not care how many rooms Caleb owned. She cared whether he knew the name of the woman who washed the towels or not. When he said no, she asked why. Caleb replied, because the woman worked the morning shift while he worked the night shift. Working together in the same building for 14 months, Miriam said. Different shifts are not a reason to not know a name, the next morning, Caleb asked. That woman's name was Gloria Jimenez. She had 3 sons, liked black coffee, and always arrived 10 minutes early because the later bus was usually late. Caleb never forgot her name again. Miriam did that to his entire life. She did not lecture. She only asked questions in the places Caleb had gotten used to not looking at. Who changed the flowers in the lobby at 4 in the morning? Who wiped the fingerprints off the glass doors after the last guest passed through? Who ate standing in the laundry room because the break time was not enough to leave the floor? She made functions revert back into human beings. When Mercer Crown opened its 10th hotel, Miriam still worked as a nurse 3 sessions a week. She said she did not want to forget the feeling of standing in a room where money could not negotiate with time. Caleb thought that was a beautiful sentence. He did not understand it. 5 years ago, Miriam was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The doctor said the disease had spread. Caleb asked what options were left, hired a medical coordinator, and created a 17-column spreadsheet. He believed that if there was enough information, death would be forced to behave like other problems. For 4 months, the medicine arrived on time. The records were not lost. Every appointment had a backup plan. But Caleb still had meetings, still flew to New York to complete a deal of which he currently no longer remembered exactly how many rooms there were. The night Miriam was so weak she could not lift a glass of water herself, Caleb sat next to the bed and replied to emails. She looked at him for a very long time. "Where are you?" "I am here." Miriam shook her head. She passed away 7 weeks later. At 4:13 a.m. Caleb sat nearby. The phone lay face down on the table. No call was important enough to answer, but that realization came too late to still be useful. After the funeral, Caleb donated $10 million to a fund supporting the families of cancer patients. The founder had a warm voice, a good image, and reports full of smiling children. 18 months later, investigative agencies discovered that most of the money had gone into a consulting company, resort real estate, and personal accounts. Caleb did not lose the ability to give money. He lost the ability to believe in the reasons people gave it. From then on, he started testing other people. A wallet left forgotten in a meeting room. A watch in the employee elevator. 3 cash envelopes placed at 3 hotels. He told himself that was not cruel. That was verification. 2 envelopes disappeared within 48 hours. The 3rd envelope was placed at the Executive Lounge 3807 at the Aurelia. Caleb thought Nia had returned it. On Monday morning, he opened a secure message to the Human Resources Director and typed, "Who was in charge of the 38th floor Executive Lounge on Thursday night?" The answer came after 11 minutes. Nia Simone Brooks. Employee code 2187, night shift housekeeping department. 3 years and 2 months of seniority. Caleb opened the summary profile instead of requesting the entire personal data. 1 page. Date of hire. Salary level. Work schedule. The emergency contact was Ruth Alvarez, a neighbor living at the same address, opposite apartment. No husband's name. No parents' names. In 3 years, Nia had never received a warning. No late arrivals. No property damage. No guest complaints. She had 6 sick days each year but had not used a single day. Caleb knew that did not mean she had never been sick. It only meant she had never been able to afford to take time off. At the end of the most recent evaluation, the manager wrote, "Works accurately, can be assigned difficult rooms, causes no conflicts, never asks for anything." Caleb read the last line twice. Previously, that was the type of comment he valued the most. Now, it made him put the profile down. A person who asks for nothing could be someone who already has everything they need. But Nia did not change her shoes under the canopy at nearly 3 in the morning because her life had no needs. Never asks was just a polite way to describe a person who had learned that speaking out about what they need rarely makes it appear. Caleb requested his personal assistant to conduct a limited verification, only using public records and benefits information already in the human resources system, without contacting Nia's family. The report arrived the following afternoon. Nia was 35 years old, single, 2 children. Lila was 10 years old. Jonah was 6 years old, diagnosed with delayed expressive language development. Nia's mother, Evelyn Brooks, was recovering from a stroke at a facility in Bronzeville. Nia paid the remaining missing cost portion each month. She had studied hotel management but dropped out after the 3rd semester. No unusual debts, no signs of gambling. Nothing to indicate that returning the money was a performance. Caleb looked at the report and felt annoyed with himself. Nia had returned an envelope with no name. He responded by turning her life into data boxes. Once again, he searched for human beings through information because information did not require him to get close enough to feel anything. That evening, the sedan parked opposite the apartment at 6:38 p.m. Caleb told the driver to turn off the engine. Nia returned at 6:51, one hand holding a grocery bag, the other holding library books. Lila ran out, taking the heavier bag without her mother asking. The little girl leaned due to the weight, but still said something that made Nia laugh. Jonah stood behind the glass door, holding a red boat up to his face. Nia immediately squatted outside, even though her knees touched the cold cement floor. She placed her hand on the glass. Jonah placed his hand on the opposite side, exactly matching the position of his mother's fingers. Red meant scared. Nia did not ask right away. She waited until Jonah opened the door himself, then went up the stairs with her two children. A few minutes later, the kitchen lit up. Caleb saw Nia take the boats out of the shoebox, line them up on the table, then point at each one. Yellow. Mom. Blue. Me. Red. Scared. Jonah looked at her lips. He tried to make a sound. The breath passed through, but the words did not form. Nia tapped 2 beats on the table. Jonah tapped back. Lila sat nearby doing homework, occasionally looking up whenever her younger brother tried one more time. Jonah belonged to a much broader group than many people thought. The CDC currently estimates that about 1 in 6 American children aged 3 to 17, equivalent to about 17%, have at least one type of developmental disability. That does not mean all are like Jonah. It shows that families needing developmental support are not rare at all. Nia opened the book about bridges. She pointed at the picture of the water surface. River. Jonah looked at the book page, then looked at the blue boat. His mouth opened. A small sound appeared, not clear enough yet to become a word. Nia turned to him immediately. No disappointment. No pity. No haste of an adult wanting the child to accomplish what they expect. She looked at Jonah as if that sound had just arrived at the exact place it needed to arrive. He tried again. M. Just a consonant. Nia raised her hand to cover her mouth for a second. After that, she lowered her hand, turned the page, and continued reading in a normal voice. She did not clap because she did not want Jonah to think his mother's love depended on him being able to speak. But under the table, her hand clenched so tightly that her fingernails dug into her skin. Caleb sat in the car, both hands resting quietly on his knees. He had built hotels by measuring the number of minutes needed to change bedsheets, the number of seconds guests waited for elevators, and the number of dollars lost when a room was empty overnight. He had never thought about the number of hours a mother could sit by the kitchen table, repeating the same syllable without getting paid, without taking a break, and without knowing when that effort would produce results. Nia stuck the red boat on the refrigerator, giving her child's fear a place instead of pretending it did not exist. Caleb looked at the line, "Never asks for anything" on his phone, then turned off the screen. "Take me back to South Shore tomorrow morning," he said to the driver. The sedan stopped in front of the building at 9:08 the next morning. Caleb got out alone. He did not bring an assistant, a lawyer, or the leather briefcase that usually turned every meeting into business before he could open his mouth. The main door still had a crack on the glass. He pulled it open, walked past the smell of steam and laundry detergent from the lower floor, then started climbing the stairs. Nia grew up less than 6 miles away from there, in a narrow house in Chatham. Her father, Curtis Brooks, was in charge of maintenance for 3 public schools. He knew how to keep a hallway brightly lit when the budget was only enough to replace half the bulbs. Her mother, Evelyn, worked in a hospital kitchen, starting her shift at 4:30 a.m. and returning with the smell of onions, bleach along with the heat clinging to her hair. The Brooks family did not have much money, but everything had a place. Bills lay in the left drawer. Keys hung on a nail next to the door. Spare change was dropped into a glass jar labeled emergency, although most months, the emergency arrived before the jar could be filled. Curtis had a rule he repeated so much that Nia once thought it was the only sentence her father knew how to say. What does not belong to you will not become yours just because you need it. When Nia was 11 years old, she found a wallet in the school restroom. Inside was $312, more than the remaining amount in the family's emergency jar that day. Their home electricity had been warned to be cut off in 3 days. Evelyn was dividing a can of meat into 4 meals. Curtis still led Nia to the principal's office and stood watching her hand the wallet back. On the way home, he did not tell his child she had done a noble deed. "Now you are still you," he said. Curtis passed away from a heart attack when Nia was 20 years old. He collapsed in the boiler room of an elementary school next to the toolbox he had used for nearly 2 decades. At that time, Naya was studying in her 3rd semester of hotel management. She took a week off to take care of the funeral, then took another semester off to help her mother pay rent. In the end, she did not return. Not because she had stopped wanting to study. Life just rarely warns which temporary decision will become permanent. Lila was born when Naya was 25 years old. The little girl's father left Chicago before the day of birth, saying he needed time to prepare. 10 years passed. That preparation had not been completed. Jonah's father stayed longer. He was present during the ultrasounds, bought an old crib, and once slept on the floor next to his child when he had a fever. But after the developmental evaluation session, when the specialist said Jonah might need many years of support, he looked at the file like looking at a bill not yet due but definitely had to be paid. He left after 6 weeks. There were no big arguments, no slammed doors, only clothes disappearing from the closet bit by bit. Then one morning Nia saw the toothbrush was no longer in the bathroom. The way a person leaves in silence creates a particular kind of pain. It leaves the person staying behind with no specific moment to hate, only hundreds of small empty spaces they must learn to step through. Nia had once asked for help. She applied to a childcare program, waited in the administrative office for 3 hours, then was asked to return because she was missing a copy of a pay stub. She called a family support organization and had to tell her circumstances to 4 different people. Everyone was polite. Everyone took notes. By the end of the call, she felt her life being dismantled into pieces of evidence so strangers could decide if she was struggling enough or not. The last time Nia asked the manager to switch shifts to take Jonah to an appointment, he agreed but said in front of 2 colleagues that the hotel could not continuously arrange around one person's personal issues. Nia thanked him. She took her child to the appointment. After that, she never asked to switch shifts again. She did not stop needing help. She only stopped placing her needs in a place where others could use them as a measure of her worth. Caleb stopped in front of apartment 2B at 9:15. From inside, there was the rustling sound of paper and a child's tapping on the table. He raised his hand and knocked 3 times. In the buildings bearing his name, Caleb rarely had to knock on doors. Other people usually opened them before he got close. Nia looked through the peephole, then opened the door exactly to the width of her shoulders. She wore a gray sweater, her hair wrapped in a towel. The tiredness under her eyes was no longer hidden by the yellow light of the hotel. "I am Caleb Mercer. I know who you are." He had prepared an explanation on the way there, but standing in front of the narrow door, every opening remark made following an employee home sound exactly like what it was. "I saw you return the money." Nia looked at him. "You came to ask why I did not take it?" "No." "To reward me?" "Not in the way you are thinking." Behind Nia, Jonah appeared with the red boat. Lila walked over, placed her hand on her younger brother's shoulder like an adult who had done it too many times. Nia shifted her body, shielding her 2 children from Caleb's view. A slight but decisive movement. He understood that despite owning 39 floors of glass by the river, at this threshold, the right to decide belonged to her. "I do not need to be thanked," Nia said, "and do not want my name to appear in the internal newsletter. I did not come to tell anyone." "Then what do you want?" Caleb looked at the red boat in Jonah's hands. "I want to talk to you about a position you should have been seen for a long time ago." Nia did not open the door further. She also did not close it. The silence lasted long enough for Caleb to understand this was not hesitation before an opportunity. This was a woman checking to see where the price of hope this time was hidden. Finally, she turned to her 2 children. "Lila, take your brother into the kitchen." When the sound of their footsteps left the hallway, Nia opened the door wider. "You have 10 minutes, she said. "And you will sit at the table," Caleb followed. The table only had enough room for 4 people. One corner was propped up with a folded piece of cardboard because the table leg was shorter than the other 3 legs. He sat down on the chair Nia pointed to, placed his 2 hands on his knees, and did not look around the apartment like someone who was appraising it. Nia sat opposite, her back straight, her 2 arms crossed in front of her chest. Caleb presented the offer in the language he understood best: structure. Mercer Crown had a 90-day operational personnel development program. Participants had to pass a process test, 3 practical evaluations, and an improvement project. No one was guaranteed a position just for participating. Nia would receive a training salary equivalent to the new job, enjoy family insurance from the day of transferring positions, and have the right to return to the old department if she did not meet the requirements. If completed, she would become an operations coordinator at the Aurelia with a salary of $58,000 a year, more than $20,000 higher than her current income. The group would pay the tuition for her to complete the hotel management program. Family benefits included speech therapy for dependents. Nia did not change her facial expression. "I have never been a manager." "You will not be evaluated like an already experienced manager," Caleb said. "You will be evaluated to see whether you have the ability to become one or not." "You know that after looking at me through the camera?" Caleb let the question lie between them. Every piece of evidence he brought up led back to the same truth. He had observed her life without permission. "I know the company did not see you," he said. "I do not know enough to pretend that I understand your life." Nia looked at the blue pen mark on the table surface. "Why me?" "Because you are capable. Not because of the envelope?" "The envelope made me pay attention. It will not make you pass the evaluation." Nia let out a small laugh, with no joy. She had heard beautiful words before, usually right before the real condition was brought out. A manager once promised to switch shifts if she took an extra floor on the weekend. A man once said he would stay by Jonah until staying required more than words. A program once advertised support for working mothers, then asked her to be present at 9 in the morning to prove she was working. "I do not accept a reward for returning what does not belong to me," she said, "and do not want to be put on the website as an inspiring story. No newsletter, no photos, no speeches. If I refuse, you return to the Monday evening shift. No one will make things difficult." This was the part Nia believed the least. A person with power opens the door, then declares she is free not to step through. Doors like that usually have hinges located on the side of the rich. They can close it at any time and call that a change in circumstances. Caleb took out a thin stack of papers. "This program has existed for 4 years, but the information lies deep in the internal portal. Many housekeeping employees have never been instructed on how to activate their accounts. So you did not create it for me." "No. You only told me it exists." "Correct." The answer made her less uncomfortable than a gift. A gift could be reclaimed with gratitude or with the story the giver tells about themselves. An already existing benefit was something else. It could still be unfair, still could be hidden, but at least it did not require Nia to turn herself into evidence for Caleb's kindness. Jonah appeared at the kitchen door, holding the yellow boat. He placed it into his mother's hand, then touched one finger on the stack of papers. "Mom is thinking," Nia said slowly. Jonah looked at her lips and tapped twice on the table. Nia tapped back. Caleb understood that was a conversation, even though he did not know the content. He had stepped into the apartment with an offer measured in money, benefits, and deadlines. But between the mother and son existed another system built of tapping beats, paper colors, and patience. "I need to think," Nia said. Caleb stood up. "The decision is yours." After he left, Nia made lunch, washed her uniform, checked Lila's homework, and read books to Jonah. Only when the 2 children were sleeping did she sit down at the table with the laundromat bill, a pen, and the phone calculator. The training shift started at 7:30 and ended at 4 o'clock. The after-school program could pick up Lila and Jonah until 5:30, but the group's reimbursement only began after 30 days. 2 classes per week ended at 9 p.m. Nia needed someone to pick up the children during the first month and stay with them on 2 evenings. She wrote it all down on paper. HUD set the fair market rent for fiscal year 2026 for a 2-bedroom apartment in the Chicago Joliet-Naperville area at $1,781 per month, equivalent to $21,372 a year. That number equaled about 60.3% of the pre-tax income of a full-time worker at the current Chicago minimum wage. This is an administrative index on rent by HUD, not the average rent of all apartments, but it shows how large the gap that a low-wage worker must overcome is. By 143, the numbers almost matched. Almost. Nia circled the blank space of the first month, then looked at it like a missing bridge segment. The opportunity Caleb placed in front of her was real. But an opportunity did not pick up children, did not heat up dinner, and did not sit next to Jonah when he woke up out of fear. Nia fell asleep on the sofa. The bill full of calculations still lay under the paper boat box on the kitchen table. The next morning, Lila found the piece of paper before Nia had time to put it away. The back of the bill was covered with hours, train fares, the after-school program, and subtractions crossed out until the paper tore. In the middle of the page, Nia circled the blank space of the first month. Next to it, she wrote 2 words, "Not possible." Lila stood in the kitchen reading for a very long time. The little girl understood what that blank space was. It was when her mother was still at the hotel. It was 2 evenings per week. It was the reimbursement money that had not yet arrived. It was the hours that a poor family usually had to fill with the time of another person. When Nia woke up at 11:20, the piece of paper had disappeared. She searched in the boat box, under the books, and in her work bag. Only when she opened the refrigerator to get milk did she see a piece of notebook paper stuck next to Jonah's appointment schedule. Lila's handwriting leaned to the right, the pencil strokes pressed heavily on the last 3 words. "I can watch Jonah. I still do that," Nia read it once. Then one more time. She did not cry. Crying is a reaction reserved for the unexpected. That line of words was not unexpected. The painful thing was that it was true. Lila knew how to heat up soup since she was 8 years old, knew how to check the door locks, knew Mrs. Ruth's number, and knew how to calm Jonah down when he could not express what made him scared. She knew those things not because Nia intentionally taught her child to mature. She knew because in this apartment, a blank space always found a person to fill it in. Nia sat down in front of her daughter. "You are not Jonah's mother." Lila did not look up. "I know. You do not have the responsibility to give up your childhood for me to go to school. I am not giving it up. Not yet." Lila closed the book. Her face was still round at the cheeks, her 2 front teeth slightly misaligned, but her eyes had the calmness of someone who was used to preparing for bad news. "If you do not take the job," the little girl said, "Jonah still has no therapy. You still work at night. You still sleep on the sofa. So which one is better?" Nia could not answer. Children should not have the ability to ask a question like that. They should be asked what they want to eat, what color they like, where they want their birthday. Not which part of their childhood they should sacrifice to keep the family running. Nia folded the piece of paper in 4 and put it in her wallet, in the compartment with the last $20 bill Evelyn had given her before the stroke. Her mother had said to buy something just for herself. Nia had never spent it. She could not find anything more valuable than the evidence that someone had once thought of her own needs. 1 hour later, a knock on the door rang out. Ruth Alvarez stood out in the hallway in a purple sweater, her 2 hands holding a still-warm tray of cornbread. She was 68 years old, having worked 32 years in a public school cafeteria. She knew what a child hiding food in their pocket looked like, knew what voice a mother used to say, "I am fine," when what she wanted to say was, "I am not allowed to collapse yet." "Did you cook too much?" Nia asked. "No, I cooked the exact amount." Ruth stepped in, placed the tray on the table, then looked at the stack of papers under the boat box. Nia did not ask how she knew. The walls were thin enough to hear a child's coughing sound, the radiator's sound, and the sound of a woman reading calculations aloud at nearly 2 in the morning. "I cannot ask you to keep the 2 kids for 5 days, Nia said. "I also cannot keep the 2 kids for 5 days. The answer made Nia look up. Ruth pulled up a chair. "The after-school program takes care of the weekdays. You need someone to pick them up in the first month and be here 2 evenings per week. I can do it. If I am tired, I will say it. If I am sick, I will say it. If I need a break, I will also say it. I do not have enough money to pay. I have not mentioned money yet. You do not owe me this, correct? You also do not owe me a less silent apartment." Ruth looked toward Lila. The little girl was pretending to read but not turning the pages. "Your daughter should not become a childcare option," she said. "She can help her brother because she loves him. But you must not build your entire future on her giving up hers." Nia turned her face toward the window. Out there, the train passing by made the glass vibrate slightly. She was used to systems requiring paperwork, conditions, and evidence. Ruth only required Nia to believe her words for 1 day, then the next day if everything was still suitable. "You cannot protect your children," Ruth said, "by letting them watch you disappear bit by bit." The sentence touched exactly the place where Nia had built the thickest wall. She thought of Lila dividing the meatball, Jonah placing the boat on the empty chair. The 2 children were not shielded from their mother's exhaustion. They only learned how to organize their lives around it. Nia opened her wallet. A piece of paper from her daughter offering to bear the burden for her. A banknote from the mother who once asked her to keep something for herself. Between those 2 things was the entire period of life Nia had lived without knowing how to receive. She took her phone. Caleb's office number was not in the stack of papers, but Nia remembered it from the internal directory. The phone rang twice. Caleb Mercer. "This is Nia Brooks." He was silent. "I will participate in the evaluation program," she said. "But I do not want to be saved. Good, Caleb replied. Because I am offering you to work. On Monday morning, Nia arrived at the Aurelia at 7:18. She wore the only white shirt she had and the shoes she had polished clean from the night before. On the 14th floor, a desk waited for her along with a computer that had not been activated. Nia pulled the chair out, looking down at the underside of the desk. There was an ink stain she had tried to wipe for 3 years without it coming clean. Then she sat down on the other side. The other side of the desk was not softer, not lighter. It only had a monitor, an intercom, and responsibilities called by different names. During the first hour, Nia could not log into the computer. The technician arrived, typed a temporary password, pointed out 3 icons, then left before she could ask where the email system was located. Nia did not call him back. She opened each item, wrote its function in a notebook, and found the inbox herself at 10:18. By noon, she received 43 emails, 12 of which used abbreviations no one explained. Nia created a separate list, listened to other people, used them in meetings, then pieced together the meanings using context. The first mistake happened on the 3rd day. She mistakenly locked a room that had been cleaned because she misread the status between inspection complete and waiting for inspection. A family had to wait an extra 26 minutes in the lobby. The supervisor fixed the error in front of the whole team, then asked whether Nia needed more time to adapt to the office environment or not. The question was spoken in a kind voice. That exact thing made it hurt more. Nia apologized, recorded the mistake, and stayed after work to read the entire process. She did not justify that the system used 2 nearly identical colors. Did not mention no one had provided full training yet. The next morning, she proposed adding a letter symbol next to the color code so people with difficulty distinguishing colors would not make the same mistake. The technology department applied the change after a week. No one mentioned that again in the meeting. The first month was a series of things Nia did not know laid out in front of others. She did not know how to book a meeting room on the shared calendar. Did not know why a 30-minute meeting needed 6 people to present what could be written in 4 sentences. Did not know some managers sent emails to a person sitting 3 chairs away instead of speaking directly. But she knew the 23rd floor needed an extra 8 minutes to clean rooms with balconies. New clean towel carts usually got stuck at the north service elevator after 4 in the afternoon. Knew the receptionists stopped promising an exact check-in time when the number of uninspected rooms exceeded 12. She knew those things because she had lived inside their consequences. Nia started eating lunch, every day, sitting down. The first time she brought her food container into the manager's break room, she stood by the door for nearly a minute because she did not know which chair she was allowed to use. No one said they had owners, but the coats, the coffee mugs, and the way everyone looked up gave the room invisible borders. Nia chose the chair near the recycling bin. Previously, she had bent under that desk to pick up plastic forks at night. The same week, Jonah started therapy with Dr. Priya Shah. During the first session, he did not look at her. He sat on the floor, folded the yellow boat, and pushed it toward his mother. Nia explained yellow meant he wanted her to stay. Dr. Priya did not take the boat out of Jonah's hands. She sat down, took another piece of paper, and asked Nia how to fold it. For 10 minutes, the 2 adults did not ask him to say anything. They only created 2 boats of different sizes, then placed them next to each other. After the therapy session, Dr. Priya looked at the box Nia brought along. Inside were word cards, bridge drawings, syllable lists, and papers sorted by color. "You have built a communication system for your child," she said. "I did what I found in books. You have done the job of a specialist with folded paper, crayons, and the time you do not have." Nia closed the box. She did not know how to receive that acknowledgement. For many years, people only said what more she needed to do for Jonah. This was the first time someone said what she had done carried a value that could be seen. By the 3rd month, Nia realized the housekeeping cart stood still for too long every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. The reports did not show the problem. The clean room rate still stayed within the threshold. The check-in time only increased by a few minutes, small enough to be seen as a normal fluctuation. But Nia remembered the hallways. She placed the laundry schedule, the checkout times, and the elevator data next to each other. The clean towel carts left the basement at 2:40. The housekeeping team needed them at 2:25. The 15-minute shortage made the staff clean rooms with fewer items first, leaving family rooms for the end. Meanwhile, the reception continued to arrange guests according to the booking order, not by the ready room types. A 15-minute discrepancy created nearly an hour of waiting guests, phones calling down continuously and towel carts getting held between floors. Nia checked 6 weeks of data. She sat at the kitchen table after her children slept, drawing the flow of towels, rooms, and guests with 3 pen colors. Ruth put a cup of tea down, then did not ask. Lila woke up at midnight, saw her mother still working, and quietly draped a blanket over her shoulders. Nia proposed shifting the first towel trip 20 minutes earlier, reserving a separate service elevator during peak hours, and letting the reception see directly the number of ready rooms by each type. The supervisor said the system had been evaluated by 2 consulting companies. Nia replied, "Those 2 companies have never pushed a cart lacking towels across the 23rd floor at 3 in the afternoon." She was requested to present to the executive board. The night before the meeting, Nia practiced in the kitchen 11 times. The first time lasted 12 minutes. The last time was down to 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Jonah sat on the floor. Every time his mother spoke too fast, he raised the red boat. Lila timed her and told her to drop the words used to sound like an office person. The next morning, Nia stood in front of the screen on the 38th floor. Caleb sat at the end of the room. He did not introduce her, did not mention the envelope, did not help when a director interrupted. Nia waited for the man to finish speaking, then continued right from the sentence she had stopped at. She presented the 15-minute discrepancy, the waiting room costs, and a 3-week trial solution. No inspiring stories, no asking for permission to be trusted. Only data seen by a person who used to stand exactly where the system failed. The trial reduced nearly half the number of late-delivered rooms in the first week. Nia passed the 90-day evaluation period. 8 months after the night, she placed the envelope down on the security counter. The phone on Caleb's desk rang. The caller was the internal audit director. "We have a problem with the money at the Aurelia," she said. "The envelope mess Brooks returned is not your envelope." Caleb did not answer immediately. He looked through the glass down to the river, where the boats moved slowly under the bridges. 8 months ago, he had looked at that same water current and believed he had just witnessed an employee pass the test created by him. Now, one sentence made the entire memory change its shape. "Explain." The 3 test envelopes all contained exactly $5,000. Each one had a microscopic number sequence under the glue layer and was withdrawn from the same control account. 2 had disappeared. The one placed at the Aurelia was not the envelope Nia returned. The security department found it behind a linen cabinet on the 36th floor. The camera showed that before Nia's shift, a service staff member had collected the towels and decorations from the executive lounge to prepare for the private meeting. The test envelope was rolled up among the tablecloths, fell off the cart when the elevator opened on the 36th floor, then slid into the slot behind the cabinet. Meanwhile, another cream-colored envelope was placed on the table. It had no identification code and contained $50,000. Caleb requested to check the camera history, the entry and exit list, and the cash transactions of that week. He sat very straight, his 2 hands placed on the table as if any movement would make the truth arrive faster. 2 hours later, the answer appeared. The money was withdrawn from the personal account of Adrian Mercer, his son. Adrian had used the executive lounge 3807 for a private meeting with the design company representatives. According to the original plan, the deposit was to be paid in cash. After that, the assistant changed the transaction to a bank transfer. The meeting ended. Everyone left. The envelope still lay on the table. Adrian did not report it missing, did not call security, did not request to check the cameras. He did not do anything because he did not know he had forgotten $50,000. That number left Adrian's life without creating a blank space big enough for him to notice. It was like a phone charger or a pen that could be found by an assistant the next day. But when Nia opened the envelope, she had seen therapy for Jonah, rent money, medicine for her mother, and dinners where Lila did not need to say she was not hungry. Caleb opened the drawer. Miriam's letter lay in the exact place, inside the envelope, soft at the corners. "Do not measure people by what they give away when they have plenty. Look at what they put down when they themselves need it the most." He had read that sentence every morning and still misunderstood it. Caleb thought Miriam spoke about generosity, but Nia did not give away what belonged to her. She put down the possibility of changing her life because she knew it did not belong to her. She did not do it in a test. No code under the glue layer. No system waiting to record. No one that she knew was looking. Caleb had used money to test people earning less than that amount in many months, then sat in a higher room to evaluate. Meanwhile, his son could forget a sum 10 times as much without realizing it disappeared. He called Adrian. "Your money has been found." The other end of the line was silent for 2 seconds. "What money?" "The envelope you left at the Aurelia." Adrian took a few more seconds to remember. "That was from November. I thought my assistant had taken it." "No, a housekeeping employee found it." "Then that is good. Tell the accountant to transfer it back to me." Caleb looked at the letter on the table. "She earns in a year less than the amount you forgot in a night." Adrian was silent. "You did not realize it was missing. I thought the transaction had been bank transferred." "That is not what I just said." Caleb's voice was not loud. The silence after every sentence was heavy enough. "The woman who found the money has 2 children. Her son needs therapy." She carried the envelope for nearly an hour. She knew exactly what the money could do. Then she returned it. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to think about what you just asked." Caleb ended the call. Adrian came to the office 3 days later without an appointment. He wore a gray suit, politely greeted the secretary, and poured himself water before sitting down. Adrian was not a cruel person. He had never humiliated an employee, always said thank you, and usually left tips. But his kindness operated within limits that never forced him to look too long at the person standing in front of him. "Why is this matter important to you?" Caleb looked at his son. For many years, they only talked about room rates, deals, and expansion plans. He had raised Adrian with the things he once did not have, then was surprised when his son did not understand the value of deprivation. "Because your mother would have returned it. Mom was not poor." "No. But when I met her, she earned less than $45,000 a year and still sent money to her younger sister. She returned it because money did not decide who she was." Outside the glass door, a bridge raised up. The traffic on both sides stopped. Adrian looked down at the people small to the point of being nearly indistinguishable, waiting for the bridge to lower. "What is her name?" "Nia Brooks." Adrian took his phone, opened the notes section, and typed 2 words. Writing the name did not fix anything. It did not give back the years Nia worked without being seen. Did not change the fact that Adrian used to walk past clean hallways and think the cleanliness existed on its own. But after writing her name, he could no longer say he did not know. The father and son sat for an extra 10 minutes without talking about the company. On the 14th floor, Nia was finishing a meeting, so she did not look at her phone. At 4:27, the screen displayed a voice message from Dr. Priya Shah. Nia did not open the message immediately. After the meeting, Caleb asked her to come up to his office. No human resources, no lawyers, no Adrian, just Caleb, the cream-colored envelope placed on the table and Miriam's letter lying next to it. He told the whole truth. The test envelope fell off the linen cart. The money Nia found belonged to Adrian. Caleb had watched her through the security camera at the executive lounge. He had followed her home. He had used human resources information to find out about her life before asking for permission. Caleb did not explain that he had good intentions, did not say that action had led to an opportunity. A good result does not turn invaded privacy into a right thing. "I am sorry," he said. Nia sat still for a very long time. "So you never tested me?" "No, you only thought you were testing." "Correct. And you followed me home because you wanted to know which poor person was good enough to return the money?" Caleb looked down at the envelope. "When you say it like that, I have no way to make it sound different. Because it is not different," he nodded. Nia looked through the glass down to the river. "I have worked here for 3 years. If there was no envelope, would you know my name?" Caleb did not answer. He did not need to. "That is exactly the problem," Nia said. "People like me have to accidentally be seen." She stood up, did not take the envelope, did not accept the thank you, and did not give Caleb immediate forgiveness just because he had confessed. Before leaving, she stopped at the door. "You opened a door. I stepped through it myself. Do not confuse those 2 things." "I will not." Nia returned to her desk at 5:12. When packing up her things, she saw Dr. Priya's message but did not listen to it. Ruth was picking up the 2 children. Nia wanted Jonah to say what he needed to say himself if he was ready. When she stepped into the apartment that evening, Lila sat by the table with her 2 hands under her thighs, trying to keep a secret too big for a 10-year-old child. Ruth stood by the sink, pretending to wipe an already dry plate. Jonah sat on the floor among the paper boats, looking at his mother with an expecting look that made Nia stop right by the door. "What is going on?" Lila looked at Ruth. Ruth looked at Jonah. No one answered. Jonah stood up, held the yellow boat, then walked to the table. He placed it on the chair Nia usually left empty during every meal. That chair was not for guests. It was for his mother, but most of the time Nia ate standing by the stove, both preparing tomorrow's lunchbox and asking Lila about homework and reminding Jonah to drink water. He pointed at the chair. "Mom," Jonah said. That word was clearer than before. It was no longer a sound stuck behind the lips. Nia bent down, but Jonah shook his head. He did not want his mother to squat next to him. He wanted something else. He placed his hand on the seat, looked straight at her, and spoke each word slowly, as if stepping across the bridge the whole family had built with paper, crayons, and thousands of times waiting. "Mom, sit down with me." Nia did not move. For 6 years, she imagined Jonah's first complete sentence would be her name. Maybe "I am hungry," "I am scared," or "I love you, Mom." She did not expect it to be a request for a thing she had never realized she had denied her children. Sit down. Not standing by the stove. Not folding clothes while eating. Not checking the clock between 2 bites of food. Just sit down and be there. Nia pulled the chair. The chair legs rubbed lightly on the floor. She sat next to Jonah. He climbed onto the chair next to hers, placed the yellow boat between the two of them, then continued eating soup as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. No one clapped. Ruth turned her face toward the sink. Lila bent down over her bowl, but a teardrop fell from her chin. Nia reached her hand out to hold her daughter's hand under the table. 4 people sat eating in the small kitchen, next to the radiator tapping on the pipe and the window still letting the wind slip through. For the first time in many years, the chair was no longer empty. A year later, Nia moved with her 2 children to a 2-bedroom apartment near Hyde Park. The first one was $80 cheaper, but the kitchen window faced a brick wall. The second one had afternoon sunlight spilling across the counter. Nia stood in the empty kitchen, looked at the dust flying in the streak of sunlight, and chose it. She paid the deposit with her own salary, not from a charity fund, not from Caleb, not from the envelope. Lila had her own room for the first time. On moving day, she stood at the threshold for a very long time, her backpack still on her shoulders. The room only had an old bed, a desk bought from a thrift store, and a curtain Ruth sewed herself. Lila stepped in, put her backpack down, then lay sideways on the bed. She slept for nearly 2 hours amidst the sound of adults moving boxes out in the hallway, as if her body had waited for years to believe there was a place that did not need her to watch over it. Jonah chose the wall corner next to the window to hang the boats. Nia used thread to connect them into a river running around the kitchen. Red boats did not disappear. Blue boats were still there, but the number of yellow boats grew more and more. At the Aurelia, Nia became an operations coordination manager after completing the study program. There were no grand ceremonies. There were no articles about the janitor discovered by a billionaire. She requested that to be clearly written in her media profile. Caleb kept his word. He changed the way the group announced benefits. The education, childcare, and healthcare programs were no longer buried in the internal portal. Employees were instructed during work hours in the language they used, with a real person sitting nearby to help register. Adrian started walking through the service hallway instead of only using the guest elevators. He learned Gloria's name in the laundry area, Malik at the loading dock, and Teresa on the night shift. Initially, people doubted him. They had their reasons. Writing down a name again did not erase the many years of not seeing it. Caleb did not gift Nia a house or money. He understood a large gift at this time would take away from her the meaning of what she had built herself. What he could do was fix the doors that had been designed so that only some people saw them. One Sunday evening, Ruth came to eat with the family. She brought cornbread and still declared she cooked the exact amount. Lila talked about school. Jonah told a long story, lacking words in some places but no longer giving up when others did not understand right away. Nia stood up to get more soup. Jonah touched the chair next to him. She looked at him, then looked at the yellow boat lying in the middle of the table. Nia sat back down. Outside the window, Chicago lit up along the river. The hotel buildings reflected on the water surface, bright to the point that from afar no one saw the service hallways behind them. But in that kitchen, everyone had a name, and no one had to stand anymore to prove they deserved to stay. Perhaps that is also what this story wants to leave behind. Not everyone who is exhausted needs a billionaire to appear at their doorstep. Sometimes, what they need is just a person willing to stop long enough to see them, Call them by their right name and open a door that was already there but hidden for too long. An opportunity cannot erase the difficult years. A sum of money also cannot heal every loss. But being seen at the right time can help a person remember that they were never useless, never inferior, and never just the job they do to survive. If Nia's story makes you remember yourself, your mother, a friend, a neighbor, or anyone who has ever silently carried the whole family without daring to say that they were tired, please share those feelings or stories in the comments section. It could be that the words you write will reach someone who needs to know that they are not the only one having to stand for too long in their life. Thank you for staying until the last lines. Thank you for listening to the story of the people often forgotten behind the lights, the clean doors, and the luxurious rooms. See you again in the next story.